Getting a little static out there? I can hear static on the speakers. All right. Welcome again to the Old Cow Report. I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and with me is my trusty sidekick, Fred, the Truth Stafford. Welcome to the program, Fred.
Hello there, Chuck.
Glad to see you made it through. Happy holiday, Christmas?
I guess so.
What'd you do?
I went over to my stepson's house, and we had dinner over there.
All right.
Over there on Christmas Day.
Okay. All right. Okay. Hopefully we got the master running. We're going to have a phone number up. This is a live program, so we always take live phone calls on our live program, of course. That way you can tell that it's live. Otherwise, you get fooled into thinking it's a tape. This is not tape. This is live. And boy, oh boy, Fred, do we have a lot to talk about tonight.
Yes.
And this is the 10,397th show, dating all the way back into the 80s, Fred.
Yes.
One of the oldest continuous programs on Public Access Channel 11. And we'll be here after some of these other guys are long gone, Fred.
Yes.
We've seen many, many of them come and go. But we're still here. You know, Fred, there's some disturbing news coming out of the East.
Yes.
Not only is the Middle East ready to blow up, and as the Old Testament of the Bible talks about how a fish hook, kind of like a hook, is going to get in the mouth of Russia and pull them back down into the Middle East for the final conflict down there. It looks like Russia could be poised to try and step in on the side of Iraq if we keep it's kind of like Iraq is kind of like an animal with a paw that's hurt, and we keep stepping on that paw, Fred. And they keep kind of screaming, and eventually those screams are going to be heard by Russia, and Russia's going to step in on their side. And it's going to be back to the good old days of the Cold War again, so that might turn into a hot one. A lot of people think that Russia is our ally, or that Russia is not any longer a threat. Russia is the biggest threat in the world, second to none as far as a threat to the safety of the United States. China is coming in a close second, but still, when you weigh all of the nuclear and chemical weapons that the former Soviet Union has, most of that now has been consolidated in Russian soil, and which is pretty controlled by the Communist Party in Russia. So things have not really changed on the surface. People think they have, but the communists are still in charge. And harkening back to one of the old Eastern Bloc nations in Hungary, Fred. Hungarian tax agents are going to start carrying cattle prods, mace, and handcuffs. And the Hungarian taxman will be a force to be reckoned with now after the Hungarian Parliament passed a controversial law Monday creating a special unit that will be issued cattle prods, mace, and handcuffs. An estimated 30% of Hungarians' gross domestic product comes from the black market, and the government wants to find ways of bringing smugglers and other tax cheaters into the fold. Members of the Criminal Directorate, as a special unit will be called, will have unusual investigative powers, including covert surveillance. During its final session of the year, Parliament approved 1999 national budget, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, Fred, they're going to have cattle prods, mace, and handcuffs to collect from the taxpayers over there. What do you think about that?
No, nothing much.
Doesn't sound very good. And of course, for the thousands of you who are not watching the football game and are tuned in, our phone number is 839-6261. And we'll be here until 10 o'clock tonight. And of course, this is a live program as opposed to being taped. All right, Fred, also, before we get into your first article there, Fred, there's been a rash of fires around the country. I think one of them killed 7 or 8 people. This one here I've got an article on is 5 die in Tennessee condominium fire. And better turn off that microphone there. Turn that off so that doesn't ring in here. There we go. 5 die in Tennessee condominium fire, Fred. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this time of year, people start turning on their heaters around the country. They got chimneys that are clogged up, and all of a sudden they start fires in the fireplaces. You know it, before you know it, we got serious problems. There's a lot of fires. Detroit, there was a very terrible one. I think 7 or 8 people died in. What I'm getting at is one thing you need to do this time of year is check your smoke alarms, your fire alarms systems, the ones that hold batteries, and just push that button, make sure that battery's good. If the battery's dead, go out and get it. It's not going to do you any good with no battery in it. And you forget about it, especially students in apartments, young and old people, you just forget about those smoke alarms. And they're there for a reason, to save your life. So all across the Eau Claire area, you should be able to check those real easily to make sure that they are in working order. And those of you that have the ones now that test for the fumes from gas furnaces or whatever, make sure those are running. Those you have a test button on them too. It's better to go out and spend $2 for a good battery than to wake up and you're out in the middle of the street, Fred, and they got fire hoses all over the place, and your building is burning down. Now, there's a lot of mobile homes in the Eau Claire area, Fred, and a lot of people living in those mobile homes have been watching the Cow Report for many, many years. I think we've got the mobile home community sewed up, Fred.
Yes.
But we want to keep those viewers alive, and so they're more dangerous than ever. Their mobile homes can go up in like 5 minutes, and you're dead. And so it's very important that if you don't have a smoke alarm, go get them. They're down to less than $10 at Menards or other stores around the area. They can save your life, especially in a mobile home where the whole mobile home can be engulfed in 5 or 10 minutes of total smoke from top to bottom. So you need those for that first line of defense. All right, Freddie boy, what do you got there? And then we're going to take our first call.
I got something here on General Shelton, who's the chief of the Army Chiefs of Staff, and he participated in taking over Haiti, and unfortunately brought back Aristide.
Aristide?
Yeah, he brought. Now he was homosexual and a Marxist.
You're talking about down in Haiti, the leader of Haiti.
Yes, in Haiti.
Well, our military reinstalled him in power, right?
I know it.
And pretty much took over the country. We still got troops down there, don't we?
Well, I don't know if they have them
I think we do. But that state is still a basket case, Haiti and Dominican Republic. We got communist countries down there. Cuba's in better shape than Haiti is, Fred. It's just a total basket case down there. They need to have a total overhaul. They need to have, like in Europe after World War II when we went in there and helped rebuild Europe, the Marshall Plan, they need to have one of them for some of them countries down the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Nicaragua, Cuba not too much, but Haiti's a basket case, the Dominican Republic. Honduras, some of them ones that were hit very badly by this hurricane.
Yes.
Was it Hurricane George?
Yes.
It was very severe damage. Over 10,000 people lost their lives. Probably 100,000 homes were either destroyed or damaged. It's going to take years to rebuild those countries, Honduras and parts of Nicaragua and
yes.
I don't think Haiti and Dominican Republic was hit. I think, the Dominican Republic was hit pretty bad too. But we need to get in there with a Marshall Plan and help lift those countries up so they don't fall into the communist trap.
Well, I saw something on television where we had the Army in there helping.
Well, that's short term, Fred. That kind of props it up. But some of this stuff is going to take years to rebuild 100,000 homes and schools and hospitals and put wiring back up, plumbing and decent sanitation, sewers and all that stuff. That's the kind of things that turns people's minds around and to where they don't want to fall into the communist trap, Fred.
Right.
But if all you give them is promises and a Bible and then we'll see you later, that doesn't work. You got to stay in there and dig the wells and build the houses and do the education, teach people how to read and write. That's what helps countries, Fred. Helps them to be self-sufficient. All right, go ahead, caller. You're on the air, the last show of the year.
Is it? I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Hi, Chuck.
Hello.
I had to call as soon as I heard you say that the show is live and it's not taped. And I was kind of wondering what happened to your last live show, which didn't come on when it was scheduled to be shown as a taped one.
Well, I'll tell you, you're going to have to talk to Felix Papalardi about that.
Oh.
He was supposed to put it on at 2 o'clock. Supposedly the tape got lost. At least that's what I heard from the PAC, the public access rumor mill.
Uh-huh.
And so the tape got lost till about 10:30 that night. Then they miraculously found it and put it on the air. Of course, these kinds of things have been going on for many, many years around here at public access. And I know that the management around here censors. They don't really censor my tapes, but they look at them with a fine-tooth comb from time to time and study them to see if there's some way that they can catch me on some area. But you know, this public access is where you have freedom of speech, and so I've been able to pretty much hold my own for the last 10, 12 years down here by just basically declaring my rights to free speech. And but once in a while they pull a stunt like they did last Monday, and the tape disappeared at 2, so they put another program on, and then miraculously found my tape about 10:30 and put it on that night, last Monday night.
When will they show that as scheduled? I know you had the Common Man on then, but I didn't get to tape it, and I didn't see all of it either.
Well, actually, that was a live program, but there was a taped version of the Common Man.
Oh, he wasn't too live then.
He hasn't been live for many, many years. What they're doing is reruns of Common Man, and so when you saw Fred and I,
yep.
Then the camera went over to Common Man. That was a taped version of the Common Man, but Fred and I were live that night. So yeah.
He was all wrapped in tape. Is he running again for offices, or?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him on his program. We haven't had him on live for many, many years because he can't be trusted. He kind of loses. He forgets where he's at sometimes, and so and he's not housebroken either. So we have to make sure that we have him on tape so that we can protect the channel here.
He'd be a good pet, I think.
Yeah.
By the way, did that sound like Norbert answering the phone tonight when I called?
That could very well be. Norbert will be on later to give us, that's of course we're talking about Norbert, Mr.
Wilson.
NASA Wilson. He'll be on later to give us the latest update on the space station, the Mars shots, what's happening on the moon, whether we actually went to the moon or not. Some people are saying now that we didn't even go to the moon, that the whole thing was faked.
Will he be live, or will he?
Yeah, he's been live for many, many years, as opposed to Common, who I think actually, Fred, I don't even know. Common's about 60 years old now. I don't even know if he's still around. We've been doing these taped versions of him all these years.
Well, maybe he's in a different time zone, and that's the only way you can show him and relate to him. I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah.
I guess this is the last Monday Night Football, or so I've been told.
It is.
And so then from the next episode onward, I will be able to actually watch you sometimes.
Well, good.
Yeah.
That's
As
good.
it is, I have to rely on tapes of you because I can only get to see a little snippet here and there.
Oh.
Yeah, just a little bit. Little tad.
Huh.
Not much.
Well, some of the Monday Night Football games are worthless anyway.
Well,
If it ain't the Vikings or the Packers, why even watch them? Right, Fred?
Yeah.
If they're watching the football, they're not watching you, so you can say pretty much whatever you want to about them.
That's right. We're thinking about putting a little video camera here where you can watch the football game and the cow report at the same time.
I did see a little donkey thing moving across your screen.
Yeah, I don't know what that's all about. We're trying to find an elephant, but...
Probably Roy Rogers Hoff is doing something with the magical...
Yeah. It's just like a kid with toys. He found a new toy to play with, so there it is.
You won't want to know what my husband thought it was.
Oh.
It looked like a donkey to me, but he described it as something a little different.
Huh. Well, you know, it's kind of looks like... it kind of looks like Clinton on the run from Hillary there.
Yeah,
I don't see her anywhere, but he sure is doing a lot of running.
Well, it's not swearing to say jackass. That's a perfectly good word.
Yeah, right. That's what they're called.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, did you want to say anything to Fred before we move along?
no, I think Fred is so sweet, and I never get to see him anymore.
Well, there he is,
Here. Hello.
live and in person.
I hope so.
And of course, he does give studio. He gives studio tours every.
I don't.
He's kind of backed off of
studio
it.
tours.
He used to do 10 a day. Now he's down to 6.
I don't do any.
Well, I
Yeah.
would want to go there during a scheduled tour, though, when it's Fred himself.
It takes about, what, 30, 35 minutes, Fred, to do the
I
whole tour?
don't know. I never gave one.
Of course, you know, Common did a lackluster performance of showing the studios several weeks ago, and but wait till Fred gives a tour of the men's and women's bathrooms and and all the stuff around here, and the pictures and the studios and the Cow Report studio. It's amazing the things that he talks about.
I believe it.
It'll enthrall you for hours.
I think it's probably amazing, though, what Common would talk about, too.
Yeah, well,
I thought he was afraid of going up flights of stairs or elevators.
well, this is all we have left of Common here.
We could get a basement tour with a Common man.
He loaned us his head, and that's it. That's,
And then
that's
we-
the only thing you'll see of Common from now on.
We could get a rooftop tour with Norbert and the rest of the building with Fred.
Yep. Well, thanks a lot for calling in.
Oh, yeah.
tonight. We really appreciate it, and you have a happy new year.
And the same to you.
All right.
And may you
now.
have a wonderful year next year on television.
Okay. We'll hopefully have some nice guests coming up, Fred. In the year to come, we're going to have Larry Nichols on again, who predicted that Clinton would bomb Iraq just before the impeachment vote, and his prediction came true. Larry's from Arkansas, used to work for the Clintons down there. We hope to have on the head of Judicial Watch again.
Yes.
Dan Pilla from the cities, and his dad, Dan Pilla Sr.,
How about
Howard Phillips.
Conyers and Barr?
We're working on that. We're going to try and get Howard Phillips on, at least by phone, if not in person. So hopefully this coming year, Fred, will have 8 or 10 guests. And that gets a little expensive, but it's worth it. You know, Fred, we've had a crusade against tobacco now on this program many years before Clinton even knew what tobacco was. Back when he was still smoking corn silk, we were doing anti-tobacco shows, and I got this Christmas card from Philip Morris. And I open it up. It comes from Denver, Colorado. And what it is, Fred, is a bunch of little pictures here. There's one of there's nothing on the back of them. Here's one of a bunch of horses. Here's one of some boats kayaking down some river in probably Colorado. Here's one of landscape out west. Nice, beautiful, fresh air, fresh water. And here's one of a girl playing a guitar. Kind of looks like she might be of American Indian extraction, playing guitar. And here's one of a Wild West, kind of a cowboy setting out west. And then here's one of a guy on a bike.
Yes.
Okay, and here's one of a bike on riding. And so then the only thing that came with it says Ranch Party continues in '99, and it's by Philip Morris. It says Surgeon General's warning: cigarette smoke contains carbon monoxide. Well, for probably about 95% of the young kids out there, they don't even know what carbon monoxide is. There's the only card that came with all these photographs, and the only thing I can understand is they're just sending this out to say, hey, this is the kind of things you can do is when you're smoking Marlboros. That's all I can figure out. But it says the ranch party continues in '99, Fred.
Yes.
And I wonder if their tour makes it around all the cancer wards around the country where people are losing their
Yes.
lungs and their lips and their tongue and parts of their nose and parts of their esophagus and their vocal cords from
Yes.
the effects of tobacco. And that's the part they don't show you or talk about. All they're saying is carbon monoxide. Cigarette smoke contains carbon monoxide. Well, what I'm saying is probably 75% of you out there that watch this program, and I don't even know what carbon monoxide is. It's the poison that comes out of your automobile, and people use it to commit suicide. But that's just one of the least damaging things. The nicotine and the tars that are in cigarettes have been causing cancer, over 300,000 deaths a year. And so, like I say, we've been crusading against tobacco for many, many years. And we don't want to see the tobacco farmers hurt. I requested that in Wisconsin, that the state legislature, I wrote a bill and gave it to Dave Zien to introduce. I don't know if it ever did, but it was to help divert the tobacco farmers in Wisconsin over to other crops, helping them with seed and loans and probably some grants just to help them convert totally from tobacco to corn, soybeans, or whatever, Fred. And
Yes.
that seemed to, people got nervous about that down in Madison because they don't want to mess with booze and cigarettes.
Yes.
They all get nervous and they start running for cover. Okay, we're going to take another call here in a second, but in the meantime, Fred, we're talking about the former Soviet Union. Russia's armed forces have been cut to 1.2 million troops. That's down from 1.5 million a year ago. This is according to Boris Yeltsin, and of course, you can believe Boris. Some of the henchmen he has around him. During a meeting with Defense Minister Igor Sergeyev, Yeltsin said his army had met its goals for troop cuts. Now, the reason they're cutting back on troops, Fred, is because the troops are starving. They're going around in the countryside, stealing from the farmers, taking animals and slaughtering them, taking vegetables,
Yes.
taking the crops and eating them, because Yeltsin is not paying his troops. Now, Clinton's idea of how to rescue this whole situation is Clinton wants to feed the Russian soldiers
Yes.
with American rations
Yes.
that we use for our troops. He wants to ship tons of that over to Russia and feed the Russian army and keep them nice
Yes.
and healthy so that when they are killing Americans that they're not starving.
Yes.
Well, so they're cutting back. Do you know, Fred, that they had over 5 million men in their army back in the 80s? 5 million. That was way more than we had. I think our army's down to about 1 million, and we've only got something like 30,000 infantry right now that could pick up a gun and go shoot if they had to. Our military's in shambles, Fred.
I
If
know.
a foreign country wanted to attack and take us over, now would be the time to do it, thanks to Bill Clinton. But anyway, the Russian military still has 1.2 million troops under arms. And that's that. So we better take another call here. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, hello, Roadkill.
Can I help you?
Who do you think this is anyway?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's,
Do you have a question?
Well,
All right, Fred, what do you got there?
I got from the Wanderer, which is a Catholic newspaper printed in St. Paul, and this is on the Christmas reflection, and it says, the conscience of America might not be outraged by the Clinton debacle, but it is deeply disturbed and has had to wrestle with what has been for so many people a conscience in a coma. That is, no one has advanced the notion that whatever the antics of President Clinton, he has acted in a manner that is totally acceptable according to secular humanism. Clinton has acted today in doing what was experienced for his personal gratification, including lying.
Okay. We better take that call, Fred, and then I want to tell you what happened on this day in history. That's something we like to talk about a little bit. And that was a very interesting article. Did you read that whole article?
Yes?
It's amazing what they're doing out there, Fred. I'll tell you, it's hard to keep up with all the things that are happening. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
yeah, I was wondering, what do you think of the Jesse the Body Ventura situation? And secondly, when are you going to get some women on this show?
Okay. Well, we're working on both aspects of that question.
Do you think you can get them on at the same time?
Well, Jesse now is, he's very, very busy. He's in his transition period. You know, of course, Fred taught him how to wrestle, and then I wrestled him back in the late 70s, early 80s. We were a tag team back on the old WWF KB.
What was Fred's name?
Fred was Bone Crusher. He had that one.
Okay.
He had that one hold.
Oh,
He had that one hold. All it was is this finger, and he taught that to Jesse the Body Ventura. It was called the hook. It was Bone Crusher Stafford with the hook, and he traveled all across the Midwest. Well, he ran into a young man over there in Minnesota back when he was 18 in wrestling in high school, and his name wasn't Jesse the Body Ventura, some kind of Greek name back then. And Fred taught him how to wrestle, and then he went off to Vietnam. He was a Navy SEAL and came back and wrestled professionally, and then went into the movies. And you know, some of those moves he did in The Predator, Fred showed him those moves. Those are some of the old wrestling moves from the 30s. But Fred is one of the old. He's one of the originators of professional wrestling. He taught Vern Gagne everything he knows. Tiny Mills. He was part owner of the first wrestling school over in the cities. And he taught me everything I know and Jesse. And we tag teamed, we whipped everybody, including, what's his name, that guy? Who's that guy? The guy that's running for president.
Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. Jesse and I had whipped his butt many times back in the late 70s and early 80s. It was amazing. And it was all because of the hook that Fred showed us. All right, Fred, back on this date, back in the old days. Let's see what happened on this date. Stalin started his purges back in the 30s on this date. Killed, some say as many as 20 million people. He killed a lot of... did you know, Fred, that during the Depression, something like upwards of 10,000 Americans from Minnesota and Wisconsin moved to Russia, and most of them were never heard from again? One of these days, I'd like to travel over to Russia and do some background checks and see if we could round up some of them people, see if any of those descendants are still alive. Most of them perished in the purges of Stalin or in the Gulag archipelagos over there. Also on this date, let's see, Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany. April 2nd, 1917, Freddie boy. So it's a pretty serious date. And some of the people who were born on this day were Charlie Weaver, remember him? Cliff
Yes.
Arquette. His daughter is Roseanne Arquette. Let's see, Martin Milner, Surfside 6, Adam 12, Colombo, Halls of Montezuma, Valley of the Dolls. He was born on this date in 1927. Let's see, who else? Hubie Green, pro golfer, born in 1946, PGA, won the U.S. Open. And Denzel Washington, Academy Award winner, Glory, which was a great movie, Malcolm X, several other movies he's been in. He was born in 1954 on this date. And Fred, back in 1958,
Number one.
this song by the Platters was famous. What was it? 1958.
I don't know.
Did you ever hear of Clyde McPhatter?
Clyde McPhatter?
Yeah, musician back in the 50s. He had a popular song back in 1958
Yeah.
on this date. And Ray Price, you probably heard of him.
Yes.
Well, one of the most popular songs in 1958, and I remember it well, Fred, is the Chipmunks had that
Yes.
Christmas song out.
Yes.
That was very popular back in 58, 41 years ago, Fred. Of course, it seems like it was yesterday. You know
Yes.
it? All right, Freddie boy, so we better take another call here. We'll quickly see if there's any major. In 1832, Fred, John C. Calhoun, the vice president, resigned, citing political differences with President Andrew Jackson and a desire to fill a vacant Senate seat in South Carolina. He became the first vice president in U.S. history to resign from his office. So there you have it on this date, Fred, 1832.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, this is the first time I listened to you, so I don't know if this is something that you're interested in, but I'm reading about the Primera Foods proposed egg-laying operation in western Wisconsin. You know about that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just reading in the Leader Telegram today, somebody wrote in about the alleged abuse it'll be causing to the animals. Do you think it's worth it to have all those jobs open up if the animals are going to be mistreated?
Well, I'll tell you, there's thousands of those operations all over the country now, and you know how popular Colonel Sanders Kentucky Fried Chicken is, and Church's Fried Chicken in the when you go farther south. Most restaurants serve meals with chicken. It's chicken salad at Wendy's. Chicken is one of the most popular foods in this country, if not the world, chicken. But yes, they do crowd thousands or hundreds of thousands of chickens in these small buildings, and I'm sure they're stressed. And so if you don't like that kind of chicken, start asking for organic. There's still organically grown chickens that are allowed to scratch around in the dirt, and they have a little chicken coop and some chicken wire, and those are mom and pop operations. But when you're feeding a country of 270 million people, and there's millions coming into the country every year, you have to be able to provide food to the table in an orderly and a quick fashion, and that's why it's turned into a kind of a factory type operation. If you've ever been down to Arcadia, they have a factory down there that's
Arcadia Fryers.
yeah, that processes them. And I videotaped, they have a window you can stand on from the outside, and you can watch the chickens go by as they clean them and stuff, and I videotaped that process and put it on an old cow report many years ago. And it's kind of hard to tell which tastes better, but to a certain extent the animals are stressed. As far as calling it abuse or cruelty to animals, that's kind of up in the air, questionable.
Did you see this article in the paper? It was talking about up to 5 hens crowded for life in a cage with a floor space barely larger than the size of a record album. Hens are debeaked by slicing off the upper beak with a hot blade. Male chicks, which are of no value to the egg industry, are thrown into garbage bags to suffocate under the weight of chicks dumped on top. Other male chicks are grown into animal feed while still alive. Do you think that's necessary? I mean, I realize I'm not a vegetarian. I eat meat. But do you think that we want something like that around here?
Well, what you can probably do is go down there and or write the company and ask them not to do those things. Try and be more humane, but any processing, any plant where you've got animals, I've worked on farms before, and I've seen some what people would probably consider cruelty to cattle that can't get up. They sit in one spot to the point where they actually, their skin is glued to the floor, and when they pull them, they have to come in and they have to pull them away with a big winch and a tractor. It pulls away their skin and sometimes even pulls off their limbs because the animal has just quit getting up and it just wants to lay there. And so there's a lot of cruelty. It appears to be cruelty, but on the other hand, the animal is just laying there dying or wasting away. And so in these operations, Fred, it is a factory situation you're in, and if you're going to feed hundreds of thousands of people from that one factory, you have to weigh the good with the bad. If you don't like the process, or if you get a job there and you see something, you can always turn them in if you feel like it's cruel or the meat's tainted or whatever. But I'll tell you one, Fred, that'll probably turn you off to eating some hamburger. I know a guy that works in a meat processing plant. A lot of the hamburger we get now is coming in from New Zealand and Australia. And of course those animals are injected with different kinds of chemicals and they form abscesses. And guess what, folks? That's where the hamburger ends up coming from, is from that abscessed meat. It's thrown in there and ground up and then brought to you fresh on your table to eat. So think about that next time you want to eat a hamburger. How nice and red it looks. I bought some hamburger that was frozen, and it was 88 cents a pound, and I thought, boy, that's cheap hamburger. I got it home and thawed it out, and what they had done was they'd taken some old meat that was on the verge of rotting, and they put that down in the container first, and then they put some nice red meat over it, and then they froze it, put it in the frozen section, and charged 88 cents, and people just grabbed it up right and left. But I think that's probably on the verge of being illegal. But next time you eat one of them fresh hamburgers down there at one of these fast food places, just think about that ground up abscess and other stuff that's in it. And that comes from a very close source that told me that firsthand, that works in a slaughterhouse and a meat packing plant out on the West Coast. Their meat goes all over the country. It comes right in from New Zealand and Australia. They just cut out the big abscesses and throw them in there and grind it up with the rest of the fat and trimmings, and you end up paying $2 a pound for it. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
I was wondering, did you seriously run for office? I mean, with dead animals in your head and your...
How do you know it's dead?
I mean,
it's dead.
I mean, you want to, seriously run for office, you ought to, get a better thing,
Why don't you tell that to Jesse,
Jesse who?
the body?
Yeah, well, look at yourself,
Yeah, I can see myself on the monitor.
No,
Pretty
nobody,
handsome, ain't I? Tell you, if it wasn't for that eye I got poked out back in the war. Fred, they don't know if that animal's alive or dead, but I notice from time to time you're feeding it little pellets. What kind of, is that raccoon food you're feeding it?
Who?
You,
Feed
when you're
what?
not giving those tours around here.
No, I don't give tours at all.
Yeah, that's not what she said.
That's what you said.
That's not what she said. All right, Freddie boy, what do you got there?
Failed President Flawed Policy by Patrick Buchanan. And he talks about Korea or China, and they have thousands of U.S. soldiers in Europe, and he claims has on 16 hands the blood of millions of Chinese and targeting U.S. cities with ICBMs.
Clinton did that?
Yep.
How's he getting away with that?
But people ought to listen to WWIB 1 to 2:30 every weekday.
That's a local.
They had a fella on today. He was Hungarian, and he's wrote a book on the 30 Years' War, and going back and discussing Russia and China and all those things, and the people who promote those things are socialists.
Yeah. Hey, Roy, can you get a close-up of this picture here? It's the latest, yeah, probably not too close, but that's the latest mobile ICBM that the Russians have developed, and they've just deployed 10 of these babies. Now, they've got dozens of the older models, but this one here is a brand new model. It's kind of propped up on one side of what they have is massive props for when they set them in place, and then this part here rises up. Well, it rises this way. Kind of rises, well, let me see. It rises up, and then it's launched. So what these do is these travel all over the former Soviet Union and some of their satellite countries, and these just travel around, and they have a regular crew that drives them and is trained on how to push the button and launch this sucker, and it'll kill several million people at once as soon as it lands. But they just deployed 10 of these, Fred, and they're bragging about it. And here the United States gives the Russians funds. We're funding their half of the so-called space station that Norbert will be talking about when he comes on about 10 till 10 tonight. But the Russian military machine, Fred, has been going full blast for years. They didn't stop because the so-called Berlin Wall came down. The Russian military has always been building. They're building, every few weeks they build a new Soviet submarine. They're building aircraft carriers. They're building very modern jets and destroyers and battleships.
Submarines.
And nuclear weapons. And here's one of their latest. They just deployed 10 of these intercontinental. That means the thing can go from Russia and land right here in Eau Claire. Nuclear missiles known as Topol-M, and put them on full combat readiness. Now, why are they on full combat readiness, Fred? Who is Russia's enemy? They've just signed some treaties with China.
Yes.
They're supposedly supposed to be at peace with us. Who are they preparing to wipe out with these weapons of mass destruction? The new single warhead missiles will be based in the Saratov region, about 700 kilometers southeast of Moscow. Once again, the Russian Defense Minister, Igor Sergeyev, said they would keep intact Russia's nuclear potential for the foreseeable future. This is a very important event because even in the difficult financial conditions of 1998, we have managed to find funds for financing this top priority area. So what they have done, Fred, is the the United States government gives them money into this pocket, and they take money out of their other pocket and they build weapons that are going to use against us someday.
Yes. Well,
And isn't that nice of them?
I never trusted the Russians, and I still don't. I
Right.
don't think we should.
Now, Mr. Sergeyev said that the adoption of the Topol-M system would preserve Russia's security and independence by keeping its missile and nuclear potential intact for the foreseeable future. So, Fred, there you have it. They got 10 of these very modern. Say, can you close the door out there? We're getting feedback. Hey, we're getting a little feedback off you guys. All right. I'll tell you, but ain't one thing around here, it's another, Roy.
Yes.
Okay, so what this article ends up, matter of fact, this came out of the BBC News. Sometimes you have to go to other countries to read about what's happening in the United States and Russia because the leftist press in this country censors a lot of what we read in this country. And yes, we do have censorship in this country. You're fed a daily diet of what the leftists want you to read. Not not the press is not actually free in this country. There's only like UPI and Reuters, Reuters and API or AP, UPI, Reuters. There's only a few news services. All the news is fed into your homes and in your newspapers. It comes from 3 or 4 sources, and that is pretty much controlled by the left-wing radicals in this country. And so you have to go to a place like the BBC to read about what's happening around the world, Fred, and other places too. And you can get that off the internet. And that really upsets the radicals and the leftists in this country, Fred, because they're nervous about the internet.
On WWIB and Point of View is Marlon Mattis's program, and it's on 5 days a week. And if you want to know what's going on in the world, you should listen to that station.
Okay, to finish up this article, the deployment comes at a time of deteriorating relationships between Russia and the West. We're the West, United States, Canada. Moscow opposes the expansion of NATO membership into Eastern Europe. It also opposes NATO action in the former Yugoslavia. Last week, Russia accused the United States and the United Kingdom of flagrantly violating international law and endangering international security by bombing Iraq in the face of Moscow's opposition on the United Nations Security Council. When the attacks began, Russia's parliament voted almost unanimously to delay indefinitely the ratification of START II, the latest round of strategic arms reduction agreements. So, Fred, and also, did you know that Russia, say, can you keep it quiet in there? That's feeding into here. Hey, tell him to be quiet in there. We got a program going in here. We don't need your program in there. We got one out here. All right.
They got a call.
Okay, so to finish up this article, Fred, Russia, by the way, exploded 5 nuclear devices in the last few months. They're not in violation of the treaty, but they're in violation of the spirit of the so-called treaties that we have in this with the former Soviet Union. By the way, we shouldn't be honoring any of those treaties, Fred, because supposedly there's no Soviet Union anymore.
Right.
So why are we honoring treaties with a country that no longer exists?
Right.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air, the final show of the year.
Yeah, Chuck, say, I was wondering with all this commotion about Clinton and morality and all this stuff, and then we got our city council member there who's leaving threats on answering machines. I was wondering what you thought of that. I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Wait a minute, who's leaving threats? What did he say, Fred?
Leaving threats on the answering machine.
Which answering machine? On mine?
No, I don't know.
Oh, well, we'll have to get some more feedback on that from somebody out there.
There's another one.
Yep. They're backed up all the way to Chicago, Fred. Well, there's a new scandal coming out of Arkansas, Fred. And this one almost toppled the government of Canada. And guess who's involved in it? Who's from Arkansas?
Clinton.
Yep, you hit the nail right on the head. This is by Susie Parker. This came out of Salon Magazine, which is a left-wing radical production off the internet. I don't know if they have a hard copy that comes out. Even the residents of Grady, Arkansas call it God-forsaken. It's an enclave of poverty where rampant drug dealing contributes at least as much to the bleak economy as the main legitimate business farming does.
Is it called?
But looming among the rows of cotton outside this dismal Arkansas River Delta town, there used to be a more profitable form of agriculture, human plasma farming. At the Cummings unit of the Arkansas penal system during the 1980s, while Clinton was governor, inmates would regularly cross the prison hospital threshold to give blood, lured by the prospect of receiving $7 a pint. The ritual was creepy to behold. Platoons of prisoners lying on rows of cots waiting for the needle-wielding prison orderly to puncture a vein and wash the clear bags filled with blood. Administrations then sold the blood to brokers, who in turn shipped it to other states and to Japan, Italy, Spain, and Canada. Despite repeated warnings from the Food and Drug Administration, Arkansas and Clinton kept its prison plasma program running until 1994, when it became the very last state to cease selling its prisoners' plasma. In a year when Arkansas scandals dating back to his governorship have returned to haunt Clinton, this one nearly toppled the government of Canada. Arkansas's prison blood business created a health crisis in Canada that nearly brought down the Liberal Party government last spring. At least 42,000 Canadians have been infected with hepatitis C and thousands more with the HIV virus, thanks to poorly screened plasma coming out of the prison system down in Arkansas, Fred. Isn't that a tragedy?
Yes.
Some of it has been tracked back to the Cummings prison in Arkansas. More than 7,000 Canadians are expected to die as a result of this blood scandal. And so there you have it, Fred. Now we're finding out that
Take your call.
we had a vampire down there in the governorship, and now he's the president. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, I have two things. The problem they have with nuclear bombs is that they don't make them out of Play-Doh.
They make them out of what?
Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Play-Doh?
Yeah. Play-Doh, like Play-Doh, but Play-Doh.
Yeah?
Yeah. Then the second thing is, this show is awesome. You guys should have it like on every day.
Well, we used to be on every day back in the old days, back in the 60s and 70s, back before they had, when everything was live, you know, back in the beginning of television, back in the late 60s when television first started.
Yeah?
We were on every day.
Really?
Fred and I would come down here. Fred would do, back then he would do 24 tours a day of the Kyle Report studio.
Oh, no.
And now he's down to 10 or 11.
No.
But back then we were on live every hour.
Oh, that would be awesome.
We had cots and we'd lay down and rest for a few minutes and go right at it again.
That is cool. And you are too.
Well, thanks a lot.
All right.
Is there anything you want to say to Freddie boy?
Fred, you're awesome, man.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There you have it. And of course, when Freddie's not giving tours down here, you can line up and he'll sign autographs. But he'll only give so many now because they're worth about 20, 25 bucks a piece. All right, Freddie boy, so there was a scandal down there in Arkansas. We got this blood-sucking vampire, now he's the president of the United States. And this is going to cost thousands of people their lives up in Canada. Can you imagine that, Freddie boy? Isn't it amazing what they're doing down there in Arkansas?
Yes.
Poison blood, Fred. I would recommend anybody has to have major surgery to go in like a month or two ahead of time and have them take out your own blood and store it somewhere in a doctor's office, refrigerator, freezer, or however they store it, and store it so that you can have your own blood transfused back into you. Now that's the only safe way to make sure you're getting nice, clean, safe blood, because there's still tainted blood out there. And it's kind of like that bad meat that we're talking about that comes into the country from Australia and New Zealand. We're selling tainted blood to other parts of the world to poison those people and give them AIDS and hepatitis. Isn't that nice of us? It came right out of Arkansas during the Clinton administration when he was the governor down there. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, how's it going?
Fine. How are you tonight?
Oh, pretty good. I just wanted to tell you that I really admire your show.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, and to the guy in the red hat.
That's Freddie.
Yeah, Freddie, how's it going?
All right.
I like how you always sit back and laugh.
He is a pretty funny guy, isn't he?
Yeah. So this is the last show for the year, huh?
Yep, you're one of the final callers of the year. Do you have any New Year resolutions?
Yeah, I do have one, actually. I'm going to start watching the cow show every time it's on.
Okay, except when the Packers or the Vikings are playing, right?
Sure. Yeah, just as long as the Packers beat the Vikings.
Well, I don't know about
Good.
that. Fred's a hardcore Packer fan, and I'm for the Vikings to win. You know, that's the only time I like to watch the Packers when they're not playing the Vikings. But I'm a Vikings fan at heart.
Yeah.
All right, Freddie boy.
Yes.
You got a new article there? What's this other article you had?
This is from the Christian Voice, and it's put out by, and it talks about homosexuality and stop the Gay and Lesbian Civil Rights Act, and it's written by Dr. Robert G. Grant. And he's the chairman of the Christian Voice. It's a pretty good explanation.
Never heard of that outfit.
Well, they're there.
Okay. Okay, just kind of keep it down there. We only got one program at a time here. All right. Here's one, Fred. Did you know that there's a bunker that they have set up in case of this Y2K gets out of hand here in the year 2000? And what most government employees enjoyed a day off yesterday. Harold Aldrich and his teams are on this secluded mountain, stood on alert, preparing for the worst. Now, we're talking about the area of Berryville, Virginia. Publicly, officials of the Federal Emergency Management Agency say that the Mount Weather facility, about 70 miles west of Washington in the Blue Ridge Mountains, is responsible for monitoring potential natural or man-made disasters and preparing responses for them. The real story, though, is in the details. Mount Weather's most important function is preparing for the worst disasters, those that threaten the top levels of government. Buried beneath the manicured lawns and the turn-of-the-century buildings of the sensitive complex is a 200,000 square foot bunker designed to protect the president, the 9 members of the Supreme Court, and other high-ranking officials during a national crisis such as nuclear attacks on Washington. Aldrich, who has worked for the government in the same capacity since 1969, will talk only about his unclassified responsibilities. So they have a command center out there that's run by FEMA, Fred, and it's pretty much set up in case things really get bad during this Y2K when possibly we have a collapse of the nuclear weapons system that's all computerized, and just about everything we have now in the military is computerized, and they're thinking that if there's a collapse around January 1st of the year 2000, it could have some serious repercussions. So that's where they'll whisk off the upper levels of government to make sure that they're safe until everything blows over. So you'll probably see where they're saying Clinton is going to go to Camp David that weekend or whatever, a day or two before New Year's. But actually they'll be whisking them away to this safe bunker out by Berryville, Virginia.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's that time of the night again. We're going to take one more call, and then we're going to have the NORB Mr. NASA Wilson report on the latest events in outer space, and that's including whether we actually went to the moon or not. So, if you want to send that call in here, we'll take that one real quick, and then we'll get on with things. And there you see Mr. NORB Mr. NASA Wilson. I don't know what the MPA stands for. Is that
NASA Public Affairs?
Okay, NORB, NASA Public Affairs. Okay, are we going to take that call or whistle Dixie in there? Well, we lost it somewhere there.
Hello?
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
So, right now, I am the last person to call on air.
Most likely.
All right. So, why don't you guys just expand the show so I can be the last caller?
Well, we got to get our NASA.
You're awesome, man.
We got to get our NASA report from NORB.
That guy's cool too. So are you.
You can see, what is that little ship flying across the screen there, Norb? What is that?
That's a space shuttle.
Space shuttle. Which one is that?
Oh, that one's
Apollo 13.
Columbia.
Columbia.
Yes.
That's still fair.
Okay, so caller, did you have
I'm the
any,
last caller to say Clado.
do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Yeah. To be the last caller next year on Call Report.
All right, well, thanks a lot for tuning in, and you have a happy holiday and New Year and all that stuff. Okay there, Norb. Now, what is the story here about, if anyone calls in, we'll just put you on hold there. We might be able to take one more call. All right, Norb, what's the story here about us not actually going to the moon?
Well, the latest thing they're talking about, not going to the moon, is about this asteroid that we failed to receive any information back once we tried to use retro rockets to orbit the asteroid. And a day or two later, they did make contact with the spacecraft, and the spacecraft did follow through on the commands. But the final report on the status was that NASA wasn't going to land on the asteroid or orbit the asteroid until after the year 2000.
Well, what the heck are they going to do on the asteroid once they land?
Well, they were going to inspect it and see if it's got little tin spikes sticking out of it.
Is there any life up there?
Not unless they put it up there and keep it warm, so it doesn't freeze to death.
Now, are they going to try and hook a cable to it or something, and so it'll stay in orbit around the Earth, or how they? I didn't know they had cable that long. How are they going to hook onto it?
Well, they just wanted to orbit around it as the asteroid goes through its orbit.
Okay, now getting back to the moonshots back in the late 60s and early 70s, some people are saying that when that craft landed on the moon, there was rockets that had to...
5 minutes.
There was rockets that were going as it landed, so it'd have a soft landing.
Yes.
But then they had photographs of that area, and there was no crater or anything around below the craft. Now, I wonder how they explain that. Some people saying that was actually, the whole thing was filmed out in Nevada, and that there actually wasn't anyone on the moon. Those shots were taken in a closed studio, much like this one out in Nevada.
Well, I heard something to that effect, that on the Walter Cronkite report, they had it all filmed ahead of time, and they landed it about 45 seconds before it actually did land. So
now, you were out there, you were with NASA back then. Is there any truth to that, or did we actually land on the moon?
Oh, you're talking about 69?
Right.
Aldrin, Glenn, and Collins. Well, I was on the island of Guam with the Air Force at that particular time, and Mike Collins did come through the circuit there. And
there was one, were you in one of the tracking centers?
We were one of the tracking centers for
Were they actually
NASA.
up there? Was it all a bunch of baloney?
They were actually up there. We were one of the
baloney and
tracking
green
centers.
cheese, or was it real?
It was real.
All right.
Mike Collins came through Guam,
Is
where
there
I was
really a
stationed.
man in the moon up there, or is that all a bunch of baloney? Is there a cow jumped over the moon?
Well, that's about like saying, is there a Santa Claus? Now, you don't want to get into something that commercial. So you're
All right,
getting into
so-
something really commercial there.
Okay, what's the latest word then? Did they actually find water up there, or is that a bunch of hooky?
Well, they
Desert Falls.
did find frozen water at the poles.
Okay, and we're going to go up there and mine the water and bring it back, or they're going to use it for future housing up there, or what?
Well, if they can, I think what they're trying to do is burn both ends of the candles and bring it together and see what's going to happen.
Okay, so what's the latest word on outer space? Is there anything new coming up? Anything on the Hubble space, on the telescope, or is there anything going on with Mars or on the moon? What's the latest word?
Well, I just gave you the latest on the one spacecraft that was postponed to orbit around the asteroid in
When's the next section
year
of
2000.
the space
Shuttle?
module going up?
Oh, this will happen next component. The third component of the space shuttle will go up on the sometime in May.
Well, how long is it going to take them to build this thing? They're going up every 6 months. It'll take forever.
Well, they actually got it all built and they got it in the storage rooms, but they're going through their sheets and their procedures in practice. So practice makes perfect.
Isn't it kind of a joke? Do we actually need them Russian rocks to get those other segments up there, or could we send them up?
Well, they got that in the plan to have those other 6 components shipped up by the Russians.
For those of you that ever been down there in Florida, you know, you see the banners being pulled by the planes over across the beach. Well, here we have the space shuttle pulling the banner there. It says call live cow phone at whatever. I can hardly read it, but it's one of them banners. And of course, that'll be going around the Earth when the next space shuttle that goes up there. They'll have that little banner going around. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air, and you're probably the final call of this evening.
Oh, that's good. I got a question for Norb. How big are those storage rooms they keep the space shuttles in that they're gonna use to go to the moon?
How big are the storage hangars?
Yeah.
They call them hangars.
Okay.
Well, there's something unbelievable what I've seen in some previews of science-related movies and shows. There's something awesome.
Well, it looks like we're heading for the final roundup of the year, the final live program on the Old Cow Report. And we really do appreciate you tuning in this year. We had a few live guests by phone. Next year we plan on expanding that and having many more guests. So we thank you for tuning in. We'll see you right here next time on the Old Cow Report.
Bye now.
See you. Nice to have you with us.
Somebody else is on.